My name's Ian Abernethy and we're here in my hometown of Cockermouth, just outside the castle. Karate is probably best known for its dynamic striking methods, but there's another side to karate called Tagumi, or old-style grappling, and it's this area of karate we're going to look at in these tapes. The masters of old recorded all the techniques within the kata, and it's within the katas we need to look if we wish to practice karate as a complete system of fighting. Striking in with that knuckle to the nerve point, grab, pull and push. Not only do the katas contain the original fighting techniques, they also contain the principles upon which the art is based. The past masters encourage us to take these principles and use them to adapt the techniques of the kata so that they'll be useful in many other situations. Motobu put it very eloquently when he said we must learn to apply the principles of the kata such that we can bend with the winds of adversity. So in this tape, not only will we look at the techniques as they're found in the kata, we'll also look at how they can be adapted and developed in line with the kata's principles. Meeting the face with a rising elbow strike. In this volume, we will look at close range strikes, neck cranks, arm locks, wrist locks and leg locks. And then I've just applied the same technique. Lean back, apply a pressure to the Achilles tendon. Although it is important to know how to grapple, it should never be taken as the first option. Striking should always be used in the first instance. Gichin Funakoshi wrote in Karate Dokyo Han that the essence of karate is found in a single thrust or kick, and one must take care not to be defeated through concern with throwing the opponent or applying a joint punishment hold. We shall now go into the dojo to look at how a number of close range striking methods from within the katas can be applied. Although grappling is very important, it's important to remember that striking should always be the preferred option. Just bring Murray on for one moment. From this distance is where most fights will begin, and it's from this distance I should try and end the fight as quickly as I can. If the fight goes beyond the first few seconds, very likely it will end up in a clinch. From this position, I can't move and I'm very vulnerable to strikes from other people. Once we're in at this position, doesn't mean that it's time to stop striking. You can still use striking very effectively at close range. The first ones we'll look at is kicking, using the legs. When we're fighting for real, all the kicks should be low, ideally lower than mid-thigh. So for the first one we'll look at is Mayageri. So when I'm kicking, I have to be sure that my opponent is not about to push forwards as I go to kick. If he does, I can be moved off balance. The first one we'll do is Mayageri. So again, key target will be the shins or the knees, either of those. It's used in Pinan Yodan kata. Kick is used to the knee to break the opponent's balance. From the clinch, we can also use side kick, stepping off the side, lifting the leg up, and stamping down onto the side of the opponent's knee. Again, the low side kick is used in Pasai kata in response to a punch or a push, which is trapped. Armbar is applied, and the kick is delivered to the inside of the opponent's knee. Another kick that can be used at close range is the back kick. Should never turn my back on my opponent, but if my opponent is behind me and is grabbed, I can lift my leg, kick backwards to the shins, the knee, or the feet to distract the opponent and hopefully break the grip. Another effective close range kick is a stamp, which is found in Naihanchi kata. This kata was a favourite of Motobu's, and legend has it that he once broke one of his opponent's legs using this technique. So the foot taps the inside of the knee, and what that's telling us is from this position, that's where we can kick the opponent. So that's one of the applications of this movement. So from there, I lift up, slam my foot into the inside of my opponent's knee, and push through. So I'll just do that one more time, lifting up, stamp in, and push through. Another one that exists in the kata is from stamping kick from Sishan. From there, the opponent is standing, feet roughly side by side, slapping one shoulder as the foot arcs upwards, stamping to the inside of this knee. From there, the opponent's head will come forwards, and then I counter with a punch. From there to there, and from here, I can punch the opponent. Stamps can also be used to a prone opponent. Just move Fred this way. Again, these are found in Naihanchi kata, or teki. As the opponent throws a punch, I move to the inside. I strike in to the neck, to the carotid sinus, catch the opponent's head, elbow strike, pull the opponent's head down, then using his hair, pull him across, punch to the jaw to knock the opponent to the ground. The kata then steps across, lifts the foot and stamps down onto the opponent's head. Obviously that's a very dangerous strike. When the opponent is put prone, can also strike to the body, and less serious, can also strike to the limbs using the feet. Bring it back up, Fred. Another kick that can also be used from this range is a roundhouse kick. Again, bringing my foot back, swinging in, striking to the outside of the thigh, using my shin or the top of my foot from that position. We'll just demonstrate that one against the pads. It is important to practice all your techniques against pads in order to generate the correct impact, and also important to follow through and not just aim at the target. From there, just demonstrate low roundhouse. You have to put that down. Very strong kick, that one. Again, we'll use from here, just swinging in. Other strikes we can use from this position are the knees. The knees can be dropped round, again onto the outside of the thigh. You can also bring the knee round to the inside of the thigh. Knees can also, of course, be used to the groin, as in pin and yodan. Many different hand strikes found throughout the various katas. Just bring on Gary. We'll look at now is the open-handed strikes, which are often more effective than the closed fists, simply because the bones in the hand aren't as dense as the bones of the skull, and when striking the head with a fist, damage hands very, very probable. So from this position, the first one we'll look at is the palm heel. So I'm striking with this part of my hand, and from there, striking with the side of the jaw, from this position, or to the nose. The nose will cause a watering of the eyes, very painful, but it doesn't have the incapacitating effect needed for to stop a determined opponent. So palm heel is one strike we've got. The other one is the nukate, striking with the tips of the fingers. Only target for this strike is the pit of the neck, a very dangerous strike that should only be used in the most severe of circumstances, from there to there. Another one we can use is the shuto, or the knife hand, striking with the edge. Many targets for this one. Main one, or one of the main ones, being the carotid sinus, striking in here. Can also be used from there to the base of the skull and straight onto the throat. Again, a very dangerous technique. Claw hand is another. The main target for that is the eyes. So moving the hand up, gouging in and pushing back. That can be used quite effectively to break the opponent's balance for a throw. And one final one we have is the web of hand strike, using the inside. So moving in from there and striking with the inside edge. And from there, very easy to go on to a choke. Thanks, Gary. Throughout the various katas, we also find uppercuts and hooking punches, which aren't utilised as much as the reverse punches and the front hand punches. Very strong punches, though, that are particularly useful at close range. Just bring in Murray to show those. Just move around this side. So if we compare the reverse punch as it's found in the kata with the reverse punch we normally use in free sparring, we have a guard, the punches snap back, and the heel and the hip come through. If we make the same changes to the uppercut punches and the hook punches as they're found in the kata, we can now use these close range punches to good effect. So they have the good advantage of they can generate a lot of power very close up, and they're very versatile as in they can find the way around stray limbs. So we'll just look at them. First one we'll look at is the Kyagizuki, or the hook punch. Show it with the backhand first. From this position, the arm movement is very small. Main power comes from the body. I turn the body around, going on the toes of the back foot. The arm comes round the side, and I strike with my knuckles to the jaw. From this position, moving through to here. Important thing, again, is to make sure the hip comes right round into the punch. We'll just demonstrate that one against the pads. Again, important to practice all your strikes against the pads. So from there, stepping across, driving through, trying to hit the pad as close to 90 degrees as we can. And you can see how close the pad is. Can get a lot of power very tight in. From there, and again, one last one. A lot of power, very tight. The other way we can do it, as well as hitting with the backhand, we can also hit with the front. front hand hook. So to get power into that, we'll turn the hips this way to begin with, to wind the hips up. From there, drop the body weight round as the arm comes round, as the body turns, and again from there, punching to the opponent's jaw. Normally, the hips will be turned because of a punch, and then I will follow up with a lead hand hook. And again, if you just demonstrate that one against the pad, so turning the body away, pushing the hip back through, striking as close as we can to 90 degrees, and following through. From there, one last one. Again, can generate a lot of power, very close distance. The other ones, other arcing punches, are the uppercuts. Because the punch is going upwards, we also want the body weight to go up. So from there, we sink down slightly, bending the legs, push with the hips as the body rises upwards, at the same time as the hand comes up, and from there, going straight up, striking under the chin. Very small target to aim for, so it can be used by pulling the head forwards and then driving up. So again, one more time, sinking down, bending the legs, pushing the hip through as we straighten and pushing up. Uppercut punch under the chin. And again, just use the pads. From there, dropping down, push up. You can also do that with the lead hand. So from this position, if using the lead hand from there, again, turning the hip in, turning the hips back as we push upwards, so the hand comes up and again strikes under the chin. 1, 2, moving up. Again, best used by pulling the opponent forward and then driving up. And again, if you show that one against the pads, so from there, turning, bending the legs, pushing up, lead hand uppercut. Thanks, Murray. Just bring in Jim, please. Again, throughout the various katas, many different types of elbowing technique, which again can be used to good effect at close range. One being the roundhouse elbow, so bring the arm round from there. Again, making sure the body is generating the power and striking to the side of the jaw. You can also use that in reverse, bring the arm round here and swing back. So we're striking around the back of the head. Another strike that can also be used is if the opponent is bent down, is to lift and strike down from here, dropping elbow strike. Elbows can also be used when we're on the ground. So if we just lie down there for the gym play. From this position, very important strike. If I drop my weight down from here as I come in, because of my body weight falling and the elbow, that can be a very strong strike to finish. You can also use the dropping elbow from the scarf hold, lifting the arm up and dropping down to distract the opponent before I stand. Elbows can also be used from the side four-quarter position, from here to elbow into the ribs, or using this arm to elbow into the head. Just bring Jim back up again. And one final strike that can be used at close range is the headbutt, which is mentioned quite a bit in the Bibishi. It also appears in a few of the katas, probably most notably in Kurumfa. So from this position here, when I strike, I want to be striking with the area here, top of the forehead, and on Jim, I want to be aiming below his eye line, the line of the eyebrows. Don't want a headbutt up here. From there, again with all strikes, must use my body weight, so dipping my head and pushing my body forward, so I'm striking with the top of the head. And again, that can be used quite effectively to strike the opponent and distract them. I can also use the headbutt from the back. If the opponent has secured a grip, I can whip the head backwards from there, headbutt in backwards onto the opponent's face. The basic neck wrench appears in a great many of the katas. The Bibishi, an old text which is often referred to as the Bible of Karate, recorded the technique as an emperor holding an egg. These are very dangerous techniques and should be omitted from live practice. That's the opening move from Gion Kata. Just bring on Fred to show the application of that. Opponent has grabbed my jacket. From there, I slap one side of the face with this hand as that knuckle is brought into the nerve point behind the back of the ear. The shock of that will loosen the opponent's neck. From there, grabbing the back of the head with one hand, grabbing the chin with the other, pull down and push up. So the neck is twisted through two directions at once. That twist can very easily break the neck, and hence the technique should only be indicated in practice. So from there, slapping the face, striking in with that knuckle to the nerve point, grab, pull and push. That movement is from the end of Chinto Kata. Just bring Robert on to show the application to that. From there, the opponent pushes towards me and the arm is hooked across. I then reach in, grabbing the back of the head to bring the opponent down, meeting the face with a rising elbow strike. I then seize either the back of the head or the hair, place the other hand under the chin as I bring his head down. From there, I turn the neck as before through two directions at once to wrench the opponent's neck, and this will expose the inside of the thigh for the knee strike. Kata then follows the movement on. In practice, can't do that because this would have a fatal effect to the opponent's vertebrae. A variation, should the opponent grab with both hands and go for a headbutt from there, I bring both hands up to cover my face and turn my head so the impact is made on the stronger part of my skull. I'll then grab, again, the back of the head and the chin, again, rotate the neck through two directions at once, and continue the movement, turning my body to take the opponent to the floor. So that one more time. Opponent grabs, comes into headbutt, I cover, take the head and rotate to take the opponent to the floor. Same movement can also be used from the ground, just from the mount position. The opponent is above me from there, pulling the opponent in to take again the back of the head and the chin, rotate as before, and as the opponent starts to lift his body weight to alleviate the pressure on the neck, I continue the motion to roll and take the opponent over. One more go at that one. So from there, pulling the opponent in, grabbing, taking hold of the chin. If the opponent has very strong neck muscles, they may be able to resist this movement. So from there, if they can, then we just move on to something else. If it works and the neck starts to turn, continue the motion, lock the opponent's neck and roll them over. That movement is from Pinan Nidan or Heian Shodan, and I'll bring Fred on to show the application of that. Again, this is an attack to the neck to take the opponent to the floor. If the opponent reaches towards me, that is palmed across, and the pulling hand, the hikate, takes hold of the opponent's arm. Arm comes round the back of the opponent's head and takes hold of the hair. I then step around, as in the kata, and then perform the gidambarai to wrench the neck and to take the opponent to the ground. Do that one more time. So from there, I've caught the arm, I'm moving, taking hold of the hair, step round, turn the body, as I perform the gidambarai to take the opponent to the ground. That movement is from Kashanku Kata. Just bring Jimmy to show the application of that. Again, this is a neck wrench to take the opponent to the floor. From a clinch, I pull the opponent in, typically to prevent me from being bitten. So I pull in so that his face is trapped between my forearm and my bicep, and hence his head is controlled. From there, I step around, as per the kata, and pull with this arm, as the kata does. And that will wrench the opponent's neck and take them to the ground. Let's do that one more time. So from the clinch, grabbing the opponent's head and pulling in, that being this movement of the kata. From there, stepping around so that I can get my body weight into the technique, pull with this arm to take the opponent to the ground. That sequence is from Kashanku Kata. Just bring in Gary, show the application for that. Low attack comes in, which I palm down. This arm reaches behind the head, and then circular motion with the arms. This arm is lifted as the head is turned. I then kick towards the shins to break the balance and drop in, keeping hold of this arm and bringing this arm round the back. From there, we would drop to the floor. Very dangerous technique because all my weight will land on the back of Gary's neck. So from here, we'll go to a kneeling position and demonstrate the next movement from there. Could also do it from a kneeling position, preempt the movement with an elbow strike, feed the arm through, hook the arm under the opponent's armpit from there, then rotate the opponent. So you'll recognise that from this in the kata. From there, I've got two options. One is I can bring my arms in together to get a crucifix hold from there to put pressure on the neck as per the kata, or I can continue to go to the ground, keeping my hand flat on the ground so that Gary's arm is controlled, and gently lean back to apply pressure to the back of the neck. Show that from kneeling once more. So from there, bringing the arm across, elbow strike, take the arm round the opponent's head and bring it back through so that I have a hook in my wrist to control the arm. Then turn the opponent over, palm of the hand to the ground. If I don't do that, Gary will find it very easy to just pull his arm straight out. Put it there for control and very carefully lean backwards to apply pressure to the neck. From that position, as the head moves up, the chin hits the chest, acts as a fulcrum and will stretch the vertebrae down the back of the neck. A very dangerous technique. She'll now go on to look at arm locks. In this section we'll look at a number of arm locks as they appear in the kata and also how they can be adapted and developed. Gichin Funakoshi's 18th principle of Karate Do was that although two fights are never the same, the principles of kata never vary. So using these principles, we'll look at how these arm locks can be adapted and used in different ways. That sequence is from Pinan Yodan Kata. For Bring Murray in, we'll do the application to that. Kata does it both sides, meaning that they can respond to a left or right-handed punch. Both times it's sideways, meaning that you must be sideways to your opponent. So if Murray throws a punch with his hand, I've slipped, I've moved to the side. This hand seizing the wrist, this hand pushing just above the elbow joint. First movement. The kata then goes to here, so I use my weight to pull the opponent in, locking the arm and positioning the opponent for the next movement. Seize the shoulder to take control of the opponent and drive in to punch to the base of the skull. Do that one more time. As the punch comes in, we move to the side, catch, push just above the elbow joint to lock the arm and to force the opponent's head to come forward. From there, seizing the shoulder to prevent the opponent from moving and pushing the weight forwards to punch to the base of the skull. That sequence is from Pinan Nidan Kata. Just bring Robert in to show the application for that. Opponent throws a punch which has been slipped. Take hold of the opponent's wrist. The forearm goes just above the opponent's elbow joint. The movement is performed at 45 degrees, meaning that I must be at 45 degrees to my opponent. This will make sure that my body weight goes into the lock. It will also take me away from any potential punch from my opponent. So from there, moving round as a push, this will dip the opponent's head. I can then step in and deliver the punch to the base of the skull. Show that one more time. Punch comes in, and to the outside, catch the wrist, forearm against the opponent's elbow joint, turn and push to drop the opponent's head, and then step in and deliver the strike. That sequence is from Pinan Yodan Kata. Just bring in Murray and we'll do the application of that one. Opponent has grabbed my lapel and the movement in the kata is performed to the sides, again signifying that I need to be sideways to my opponent. The main reason for that is to take me away from any backhand strike. So from here I reach across, placing my thumb between the thumb and the index finger, and from there turning, using my elbow to lock the opponent's arm and force it to bend forward. So from there, the Gidamrai comes round, and that would either seize the hair, in olden times it would be the top knot, Or if the opponent's hair is short, hook your thumb under the nose and push back. Same time, kick is delivered to the knee to drop the opponent onto his knees. I then control the head and strike with the elbow strike to the side of the jaw. Kata then repeats it on the other side. So just do that one again. Opponent has grabbed the lapel, reaching over, grabbing the hand and turning to avoid any backhand punch. From there, using my elbow to push down on the top of the opponent's elbow to lock the arm and to force the opponent forwards. This arm comes round, either grabbing the hair or hooking under the nose. At the same time, deliver a kick to the knee to drop the opponent to his knees, take hold of the side of the head and deliver an elbow strike to finish. That movement is found in Wadaru's Pin Andy Dan. I'll just bring Robert on to show the application. The opponent pushes towards me, which I deflect. From there, I apply a wrist lock to take the opponent to the floor. I'm now in short cat stance. My foot is close against Robert's back. I then pull on the wrist so that the elbow joint is barred against my thigh. This technique can also be applied from the scarf hold. From this position, I change my legs and then pushing on the wrist, I bar Robert's elbow against my thigh. On the previous technique, we barred the opponent's arm using the thighs. On this technique, we're going to bar the arm using the front of the pelvis. I'll show the technique quickly first and then we'll do it in more detail. From the mount, the opponent has grabbed my arm, drop backwards and bar. So from there, the opponent has reached up. I take hold of the hand, strike down, turn the opponent's face and push so that they can't stand. I take my weight off, stepping round with that foot, dropping backwards, interlocking both of my legs, making sure that my calf is away from my opponent's mouth so I'm not easily bitten. I then pull down on the opponent's wrist as I push upwards with my hips to lock the arm. Do that one more time. So from there, pushing across, turning the face, stepping round, dropping backwards, interlocking the legs, pulling on the opponent's wrist, being sure that the thumb is upwards. You can also do this technique from underneath the opponent. From inside the guard, I'll do it quickly first and then I'll show it slowly. So from that position. So from there, catching one of the opponent's arms as he reaches up to punch, I reach through the inside of his thigh and I use that to turn my body. I swing my leg over my opponent's face, pull down with my legs, interlock, and drop backwards, and barring the arm as before. One more time. So from this position, reaching through, turning, bringing my leg across my opponent's face, pulling back, keeping control of the arm, interlock my legs, lift my pelvis as I pull against the wrist. This next technique is a variation of an arm lock that's found within Seipai Kata. My opponent pushes towards me, the arm is deflected, my arm then circles the opponent's arm such that the upper side of my forearm is pushing against the area that is just above the elbow joint. From there, I place my hand onto my opponent's shoulder and grab my own forearm. From there, I push down on the shoulder as I lift my own forearm upwards to lock the arm. From this position, I can throw the opponent. I reap through. From there, I still have control of the opponent. The arm lock is still on. This arm lock can also be used from the side 4/4. From there, again taking hold of the opponent's wrist, feeding my arm underneath so that it is just above the elbow joint, taking hold of my own forearm, and from there, pushing down as I lift my forearm upwards. That That sequence is from Pinan Shodan Kata. Just bring Murray on, we'll show the application to that. From a grab, I break the opponent's grasp and move my arm behind my opponent, this being the first move of the kata. I then move my arms as in the kata, pulling this arm in towards his elbow joint, as that arm pushes down and away, putting pressure onto the shoulder joint. From there, if I continue the pressure, the opponent will fall to the floor. Do that one more time. So, moving sideways, moving the arms in, pulling towards the elbow joint as I push through to apply the lock. The lock can be difficult to apply. The third movement tells us that should the lock not be there, you pull away and deliver a strike to the opponent's face. In Wadaru, the pull backwards can be used to sweep the opponent's legs. From there, pulling inwards, locking the arm, and taking the opponent to the floor. A variation of that lock can also be used from the side 4/4 position. If I take hold of my opponent's wrist, feed my other arm underneath his arm, take hold of my own wrist, and then from there, pull his arm in towards him and lift the elbow. And this will put pressure on the top of the shoulder joint. The technique can also be used from the mount position. Again, seizing the opponent's wrist, feeding my arm underneath my opponent's arm, take hold of my wrist, pull in, and then from there roll forwards to apply the lock. The wrists are very mobile joints and hence can be locked in a number of different ways, all of which can be found in the various katas. Wrist locks are normally very intricate techniques and hence can be very difficult to apply in real situations. Notice how many of the techniques flow on from the opponent stopping an attempt to attack the eyes, throat or groin, emphasising that simple techniques should always be used in the first instance. That movement is a wrist lock from Wadaru's Pinan Nidan. Bring on Murray to show the application for that. Murray pushes. Take the opponent to the floor using the wrist and then bar using the thigh. Look at the wrist lock in more detail. As Murray pushes, the arm is palmed across. I then turn so that my fingers are on the crease of Murray's wrist and my thumb is pressing here on the back of his hand. From there, I push my hand against the edge of Murray's and push down as I turn my body to throw the opponent to the floor. One more time. So as I push, palm across, turn, catching the wrist, putting the hand on the edge of the opponent's hand, and turning and throwing the opponent to the floor. This technique can be difficult to apply in a real situation because of the fact that it's quite fiddly. This movement is a wrist lock from Naihanchi or Teki Kata. The opponent has seized the wrist, preventing a low attack. I then pin my opponent's hand, turn so that the edge of my hand cuts into the opponent's wrist. Then grab my opponent's arm and bring the hand back towards me. This will drop the opponent's head off to one side, and in many versions of Naihanchi, there's a step across to line itself back up, then the knee comes up to strike. Show that one again. So Robert seizes, I pin the hand, I turn and cut, I push down, so he drops across, step, and bring the knee up. This technique, should the opponent's elbow get higher than his hand, like so, the technique won't work. So to counter that, you can bring your own elbow across and knock the opponent's elbow down, and then from there, apply the lock as before. That sequence is from Pinan Godan Kata, and if I bring Murray on to show the application, this is a wrist lock to free my hand. So from a clinch, I attempt a low attack, and Murray counters by seizing my wrist. Just move the arm so you can see. From there, I bring my arm down, on top of my own forearm, and underneath Murray's, this being the lower cross block. From there, I bring the arms in, towards my body, like the kata, such that the wrist is locked, and this will force the opponent onto his toes, and will break his grasp. I'll then bring the arms up, as in the kata. From there, this arm cuts round, ensuring I maintain contact as I push on the elbow joint to drop the opponent's head forwards. I then punch, as in the kata, and should the opponent fall away, I follow up and deliver a second strike. Show that one more time. So from a low clinch, from there, the wrist is grabbed, I bring my arm down, pull in to break the opponent's grasp, bring the arms up, keep contact as I turn and push to drop the opponent's head. I punch from there, and should the punch be hard enough to knock the opponent off balance, I step in and deliver a second strike to finish. That sequence is from early on in Jian Kata. There's a wrist lock in defence to a neck grab. Bring Murray on to show. Opponent has reached up and has grabbed round the neck. From there, I chop in to the arm, at the same time striking my opponent. From here, I place my thumb in between Murray's thumb and index finger and move from there, bringing my fingers onto the inside of the wrist to here. So you'll recognise that position from the kata. I then rotate the fingers so they're pointing towards the ceiling. That will lock Murray's wrist and drop him to his knees. From there, I kick to the opponent's face and then follow up with a series of punches. So the lock itself, putting the thumb that way in there, taking hold of the edge of the hand, fingers to the inside of the arm to ensure that it's bent. I turn at 45 degrees away from any oncoming attack, and from there I rotate the fingers so they point upwards, and this will cause the opponent to buckle at the knees, and from here strike the opponent to finish. That movement is then repeated 2 times and is found in the middle of Pinan Sandan. Let's bring Robert on in to show the application. So from a clinch, I reach up and attempt an eye gouge. In response to this, the opponent grabs my wrist and moves the hand away from the face. Sensing that, I reach, placing my hand on the back of my opponent's hand and swing my elbow over the top of my opponent's. I then assume horse stance, as per the kata, to lock the opponent's wrist and drop him to his knees. From there, I deliver hammer fist to the kneeling opponent's head. So that one more time. So from this position, I reach up to attempt an eye gouge. The opponent grabs the wrist and moves the hand away. I then seize on the wrist, bring my arm over the top of my opponent's forearm and drop the elbow down as I drop my weight. And from there, deliver a hammer fist strike to the kneeling opponent's head. That movement is found at the start of Pasai Kata. Ring Robert in. This technique is a preemptive response to the opponent threatening with the fist. The salutation at the start, opponent is threatening, seize the wrist, place my hand on the knuckles on the back of the hand, these 2 knuckles. From there, I push down and in to lock the opponent's wrist and to take him to the ground. Show one more time. From there, seize, push, and take the arms down to the opening position to lock the wrist and to drop the opponent. If the opponent is physically strong enough to resist the first technique, the kata then tells us to step across such that our body weight is moving in the same direction as the push. So from there, as Robert threatens, I would seize, step across, and move into this stance to take him to the floor. One more time. Threatens, grab, move the body weight across, to lock the wrist and drop the opponent to the ground. The previous technique attacked the joint by bending it in this direction, and this technique will also attack the joint by bending it in this direction. As the opponent reaches towards me, I palm the hands across. I then strike using a reach hand onto the inside of my opponent's elbow to bend the arm. I seize the wrist and take hold of my own forearm, pulling the hand towards me such that the elbow is against my chest. From there, the wrist is locked. I turn the body to take the opponent to the ground, and from there, if I pull upwards on the wrist, I can break the wrist or get the submission. Just show that again. So as the opponent pushes, I guide across, seizing the wrist. I then strike to the inside of the elbow joint, bending the arm. I take hold of my own forearm and pull the arm towards me so the elbow is against my chest. The wrist lock is on at this point. I then turn to take the opponent to the floor, using my knees to control, and from here, pulling upwards, to break the wrist or to get the submission. Many wrist locks can be very difficult to apply in real situations and are best used as a means to facilitate other techniques. An example of this is while ground fighting. As I go to attempt the cross lock, the opponent seizes his own wrist and hence prevents me from applying the lock. I use my forearm to secure my opponent's arm. I then reach, bend the wrist and turn such that the pain forces the opponent to release his grasp. I then fall backwards and apply the cross lock. Just show that one more time. So from there, as I go to apply the cross lock, the opponent reaches up and grabs his wrist. I can't apply the cross lock, so I reach through, controlling the arm with my forearm, grab the wrist, bend, twist, and drop back, and now I can apply the lock. Leg locks are found in a number of the katas and are also referred to in the bibishi. The leg locks of karate are most often used to take away an opponent's stability and force them to the floor, but it is also possible to apply leg locks to attack the joints. First leg lock is found within Niseishi kata and is done in response to a kick. Robert throws a kick towards me. I shift off to the side, catch it with this arm. My forearm is just above the kneecap. I then push down to hyperextend the knee and to force the opponent to the floor. Just do that one again. So as the kick comes in, I move to the side, catch, push on the top of the knee joint to take the opponent to the ground. Technique can also be done if I was kneeling, if my opponent had knocked me to my knees, to even the odds. So from this position, again, I place my forearm just above the knee. My hand goes just on the back of the ankle joint. I then pull and push at the same time to lock the leg, to force the opponent to the ground. Technique can also be applied using the shoulder. So in this instance, I catch the ankle with both hands, place my knee again just above the kneecap, pull and push to force the opponent to the ground. The opponent has knocked me to my knees, so I'm now going to use a technique from Niseishi or Kurunfa kata to take him to the floor. From here, I place one hand on the outside of my opponent's ankle, the other hand on the inside of his knee. I then pull and push to lock the leg and to drive the opponent to the ground. Stand up. Technique can also be applied using the shoulder. I place both hands to the outside of the ankle joint and my shoulder to the inside of the knee. Again, pull and push to lock the leg and to take the opponent to the ground. Using Seishandachi or any of the inner circular stances, it's possible to lock the opponent's leg and break his balance. So assuming Seishan stance, then from there, if I bring my foot in so that it touches the inside of my opponent's foot, then from there push across with the knee to break the opponent's balance and lock the leg. If I just show that from the other side, from there, bringing the foot in so that the feet touch, use my knee to push across and lock the opponent's leg, and then from there, very easy to take the opponent to the floor. This technique is a leg lock to finish off the opponent. From a vertical position, I drop down, scooping up the opponent's leg, and from there, I remount the supporting leg to take the opponent to the ground. From this position, I still have hold of this leg. I step round, taking hold of the opponent's ankle joint and drop my weight down onto the knee to injure the joint. So from there, just pulling up on the ankle as I drop my weight. This is a leg lock submission from the side 4/4 position. From here, I place my arm underneath my opponent's leg and lift. Once I have it lifted, I step across from this position, dropping onto the opponent and take hold of his ankle. I fall forward, interlocking both of my legs to take control of the opponent's leg, and then from there a pull towards me to hyperextend his knee joint. So just do that one once more. So from there, lifting the leg, stepping across, dropping the weight onto my opponent, interlocking the legs as I fall to take control of my opponent's leg, then using my forearm to pull back to hyperextend the knee joint. As well as locking the knee joint, it's also possible to lock the ankle joint. From this position, I've thrown the opponent, I wrap my arm round his ankle joint so the upper edge of my forearm is cutting into his Achilles tendon. From there, I clasp my hands together and lean back to apply a pressure to the back of my opponent's ankle. Also from this position, once I'm here, I can step across from there to turn the opponent, and then I just apply the same technique. Lean back, apply a pressure to the Achilles tendon. Another ankle lock we can use from this position is once the opponent's been thrown, I catch the heel and the toes and rotate the ankle to turn the opponent face down. From that position, the opponent's very vulnerable. Shouldn't try and turn the opponent this way, as the leg can come over the top and kick. Always try and turn your opponent onto his leg. Ankle locks can also be used from the ground. From the guard position, should my opponent open his guard for any reason, if I drop backwards, again, place my forearm into the Achilles tendon, drop back, interlock both of my legs to take control of my opponents, seize my hands and again lean back to hyperextend the ankle joint. In this tape we've looked at a few of karate's grappling methods, but there are many more. I would encourage you to analyse your katas and extract further grappling techniques from them. This concludes this volume and I hope you found it useful. Featured in volume 2, throws and takedowns, chokes and strangles, finger locks, ground fighting holds, keeping it simple, nerve points, and sparring.